Good morning or good afternoon, boys. We are going to be dealing with advertising today. So, advertising generally, the key word we need to look at here is persuasion. So, if we look at the above images, what do you think when you look at them? So, the first image is Nando's. I know the first thing that comes to my mind is their clever sort of witty wordplay when they advertise. They're not afraid to take on politicians or look at sort of serious current events. In the next image, we have what we generally tend to see. I don't know when last I saw a man in an advert for a washing machine or washing powder. And thirdly, when we look at Trelleborg, I think they've worked really hard to create sort of an image of safety. We need to look at, when we look at ads, who are they for and what do we associate with them? So the purpose of an advert is to persuade the audience to buy the product or service or to buy into an idea or a way of thinking. So the definition of advertising, it's any form of message in the paid media which appeals to an identified target audience with the objective of influencing the target audience to use the product or service of the sponsor. So advertisers generally pay millions and millions of rands for an advert. It can be less or more depending on if it's in the middle of something that a lot of people are going to be guaranteed to be watching. So like the final Game of Thrones episode. Also, the objective of an advert is for people to go out and spend money. So if you watch the advert and think, oh, okay, that's funny, and you don't do anything about it, then the advert really has failed. So the requirements of a good advertisement, they have to attract the attention. So if you are watching an advert and it gets you hooked, I don't know if you guys have noticed that generally adverts tend to be louder than the TV show that they are in, if we're looking at TV adverts, for example. This is because generally during an ad break, that's when you'll get up to make a cup of coffee or get a snack. And if you listen sort of carefully from now on, you'll pick up that the advert tends to be louder because they know that people are walking away from the television. So it needs to arouse an interest. So they've grabbed your attention. You think, well, this is a great ad, whether it's sort of media or whether it's on the television or it's print or a billboard. It needs to arouse your interest. So it needs to make you think. Then it needs to awaken a desire. It needs to, when you watch it or read it or see it on a billboard or hear it on the radio, it needs to make you want that product or service or to want to get involved if it's a charity. And then to spur on action. That's probably the most important requirement. It requires you to spend money or to take time or to sign a petition. So whatever it is that the ad is trying to get you to do, you have to do that in order for the advert to be successful. So advertising jargon. Now, jargon is terminology we speak of when it's sort of connected to a special activity. So it generally is full of industry terms, so words that have a particular meaning within that specific industry. So these are words that are connected to and will be used generally in advertising specifically. So when we talk about a product, it can mean many things. It could mean the item being advertised, the car, the washing machine. It could be a service, so they could be providing a service for you, or the idea that is being sold, whether it's an ad to stop smoking. Then when we talk about the target group or the audience, that is the group of people that the advert is aimed at. So we generally look at three things when we talk about a target group or an audience. We talk about age, finance, and gender. So we would talk about, for example, young, rich women. A slogan is a short, catchy phrase that is always associated with that product. A slogan generally tends to be short. That's the most important part. It has to be catchy because it has to be memorable. So when we talk about finger licking good, that could generally only belong to one sort of company. When we talk about copy, so we talk about the copy in an advertisement. Those are the words. So copy generally would refer to a printed advert, or if it's an advert that is on TV, it's any printed text that you see on the screen. So it's both what the words say, the shape, the color, the size. Certain colors, you'll see in some video links that your teachers will give in your lesson. Certain colors are associated with certain things. And then visuals. Visuals are any elements in the advert that are not words. So we're going to start by looking through a few adverts. Here, this was a 2004 advert by Mercedes-Benz. They had won Truck of the Year. So you'll see in the middle, you've got taking pride of place, and that's generally where the eye tends to go first. So whenever there is an image in an advert, it generally, the one they want you to focus on is the one that's in the middle. Also, this one happens to be red, which also then will additionally attract your attention. All the other trucks, now very carefully you'll see we can't see the brands of those trucks, because in many countries in the world, what we call comparative advertising is not allowed. So Mercedes-Benz, for example, couldn't show you that one was an Audi, one was a BMW, one was a Mazda, because that then would be comparative advertising and them outright saying our Mercedes-Benz is better than this Audi, for example. In America, comparative advertising is very much allowed, which is why during elections, you will hear Donald Trump, for example, outwardly criticizing Hillary Clinton. So the trucks here are all bending down to the Mercedes-Benz, a show of respect or honor, saying that they acknowledge the fact that the Mercedes-Benz is the best. This is what we call a PSA. It's a public service announcement. So it's not generally an ad to sell a product, but to sell an idea. So the advert is selling the idea of getting you to stop smoking. So these are very powerful sort of ads using imagery. They don't really rely on text. There's a very sort of catchy slogan at the bottom: kill a cigarette and save a life, yours. The shorter the sentence, the catchier the slogan and the more memorable and easy to remember. So you'll see in the first image, the smoke from the cigarette is causing a noose, which is then hanging the young woman. And in the second, a knife. So what they are saying is, if you are smoking, it's basically the same thing as killing yourself. Then here, this was an ad for the National Geographic channel, and this is on the side of a bus. This was in America. So what they had here was, again, this is smart advertising essentially, because public transport is fairly sort of popular in America or in Europe, and so a lot of people will see the advert on the side of this bus. It's also very smart because what they've done is the doors have created the jaw of the shark, the teeth. So people entering the bus, it appears as if they are being eaten by the shark. So again, in this advert, they are playing on the fact that research has shown a lot of young people start smoking because they are under the impression that they think it looks cool. So in that first image there, the ash and smoke is creating someone sort of crawling away, they're dying. And in the second one, she's using the cigarette as if it were lipstick. The same thing, putting on makeup because you think it makes you look pretty. Again, playing on the fact that many young people start smoking because they think it makes them look cool or look pretty or sexy. So again, here, this is an advert for a zoo, and they have a boa constrictor. Literally, the image creates the idea that the snake is constricting the bus. This is a very smart ad by Pepsi. So if you've seen these sort of soft drink or brewery trucks, generally the sides are covered with a soft top. So what they've done here is they've printed an image on the top of the crates of Pepsi being sort of hanging upside down. Now again, probably not super safe in that this will attract so much attention that it could cause a car accident. But generally, this will leave you sort of, when you drive away, thinking, you know, you've got Pepsi in the back of your head, which is exactly what they want. And generally, it's free advertising. It's on the side and the back of their own truck. So it doesn't cost them anything, but the effect thereof is enormous. Here, not a particularly politically correct ad, but on the back of the bus, they've printed an image implying that the woman we see on the far right is weighing down the side of the bus. So this is an ad for Weight Watchers, a weight loss company. Here we have an advert in Asia of, this is for a nose hair trimmer. So again, a billboard, something millions of people will see, and it tends to be pretty cost effective. And the wires from the electric poles nearby are forming the nose hairs. So again, you'll see in the far, sort of in the bottom right, there's a tiny bit of text, but the ad is definitely relying on the strength of its visual impact. Now, here we have a good example of an ad that doesn't contain much. And this was a print ad, can be super effective. Also, ads that use a lot of text tend to, research has shown, make readers or viewers feel like the advertiser is talking down to them, as if they need to over-explain what it is they are selling, because the reader or viewer or the target audience, the consumer, is not smart enough to figure it out themselves. So this was an ad that MTV placed when Michael Jackson passed away. So a really sort of iconic Michael Jackson image with the black pants, black shoes, and white socks. And also, Michael Jackson was a huge supporter of AIDS charities and AIDS foundations. So simple, the pants forming an AIDS ribbon, and then just his name and when he was born and when he died. A really big impact with this ad, MTV showing that what Michael Jackson stood for sort of speaks for itself. Okay, so a really smart ad by Hyundai here. So again, two simple images, a bike and a car, and they sort of are comparing the two. So both are affordable, both are durable, both are low maintenance, but only the car requires no pedaling. Here we have an ad using an optical illusion. This was a Mercedes-Benz ad to advertise their blind spot assist when parking or driving. And if you look at the man carefully, sort of from the side or from the front, either way, what they're implying is that you could look to the side without actually looking to the side. Here, this is, again, what we would call a public service announcement. So in America, Kinder eggs, I know quite popular in South Africa, are not allowed because of child safety. The implication being that the toy inside is a choking hazard. However, ironically, in America, you could walk into almost any store and buy a gun. Also, I think a nod at the spate of school shootings and deaths of children. And the copy in this text, the words in this advert are really effective. One child is holding something that's been banned in America to protect them. Guess which one? Most people would probably guess the gun. I think the point they're trying to make here is they sort of are using a massive hyperbole in comparison here to show, the viewer or the reader would then sort of be surprised at the fact that a simple Kinder egg would be banned when anyone could walk into any store and buy a gun. To the average sort of rational person, that makes no sense. So this ad, I'm very much using humor, again, and relying on text. So you've got the little sort of copy at the bottom saying, perhaps it's time to turn to Pedigree Light dog food. And then what I'm guessing is sort of a pug or a French bulldog is struggling to get into the doggy door, maybe implying that it's time to just lose a little weight. Now here, this is an ad by the World Wildlife Fund saying, would you care more if I was a gorilla? People tend to generally, when it comes to animal welfare, care about what we would sort of maybe term the fluffy animals, the tigers, the lions, the gorillas, and we tend to not really pay attention to marine life. So I think the implication here from the World Wildlife Fund, there's clearly a mask on this fish, trying to sort of maybe make the reader take note that not all animals that need help are sort of the fluffy variety. This again, a non-smoking ad, showing, I think the impact here is from the rows and rows and rows of never-ending crosses, and then the tiny sort of non-smoking area, those people who didn't smoke and who are not dead because of it and still living. This is a really interesting ad from McDonald's. So when paging through a magazine, sort of the red background and the big yellow text would make you sort of pay attention. And what they say is, we don't hire Turks, Greeks, Poles, Indians, Ethiopians, Vietnamese, Chinese, or Peruvians. And again, at first glance, as a reader, you might think, that's not super smart, McDonald's. And however, if you look at the bottom of the page, they've added in sort of small text, but the key here is that the large yellow text is what makes you pay attention. It grabs your attention. Again, if we look back at the principles of advertising, this is sort of where that comes in. And right at the bottom, they've added in, we don't hire Swedes, South Koreans, or Norwegians. And here's the key phrase, we hire individuals. We don't care what your surname is, because ambition and determination have nothing to do with your nationality. So when we look at the smaller text in detail at the bottom of the page, it directly sort of subverts the bit that grabbed your attention. And again, as a rational consumer or reader, you might know that McDonald's would never say something like this, but that's not the point. The point is that that got you thinking, and that's what's grabbed you into reading further. And they then go on to say that McDonald's is one of the most integrated companies in Sweden, with as many as 95 nationalities working for them. So again, many of you will remember a couple of years back when Kentucky Fried Chicken ran out of chicken. So here you'll see the main image that grabs our attention is an empty bucket of chicken with the KFC letters rearranged. I think we can all sort of extrapolate what that word means. And the bigger text, very simply, just 2 words, we're sorry. So they didn't try and back out of it. They didn't try to explain, we're sorry. Okay, this was an ad for IKEA, a furniture company in Europe and America and the UK. And this was very, very soon after Prince Harry and Meghan Markle got married. And this chair is called the Harry. Again, simple stock image, white chair on a black background, and just the text, don't worry, Harry is still available. Now here, this is an example, again, a very good example of comparative advertising, something that is not allowed in a lot of countries. This was an ad by Pepsi, and Pepsi was implying that they wanted everyone to have a scary Halloween. And for Pepsi, the scariest thing possible would be to be mistaken for a Coca-Cola, implying again that they are far superior to Coca-Cola. And obviously with Halloween, everyone dressing up in capes, superheroes, they've dressed up their Pepsi can as a Coke and are implying that that is the worst thing they could think of. So again, in this advert, an advert for Pedigree, and again, just a simple text, for strong dogs. That dog is then digging up a tar road. Again, the implication being, buy your dog Pedigree and your dog will be strong enough to dig up a tar road. So this was an advert for a bicycle courier company in Germany. Again, going so fast that you can see this courier's face is being affected by sort of the wind tunnel, because that's how fast they are. This here, an ad for hair gel. Again, very effective, very little text, mainly relying on image. And here you have the hair holding onto his head the same way that sort of a lizard would. This was an advert for dummies or pacifiers. You guys might not know this yet, but if you ask your parents, generally a pacifier or a dummy, the word pacifier obviously means to calm down. So, and the phrase at the bottom, or the text at the bottom saying, for difficult little people. The baby, then obviously they've superimposed some tattoos and nose and lip piercing on the baby, implying that the only thing needed to calm down this rough baby is just simply a dummy. Their dummy, more specifically. Again, here a public service announcement for abuse against women. You can't even see her whole face, just sort of the bruising again and the implication of that, and the zipper across her mouth, representing the silence around issues of abuse and gender-based violence. Another smart World Wildlife Fund ad here. Obviously, again, something that has massively affected South Africans for many, many years is rhino poaching. And if we weren't aware, rhinos are poached for their horns, which are made of keratin, which is the same thing that makes up your hair and your nails. Again here, replacing the horn with hands, and saying that rhino horn is made of the same stuff as human nails. Still want some? So World Wildlife Fund is also quite famous for not sort of, or for the snarky tone of their adverts. They tend to be sort of hard hitting. They're not sort of as cute and cuddly as some charities would use, and they tend to be really hard hitting with the truth. Okay, so here we have a mascara advert. You gents might not be aware of this, but generally, mascara, when women cry, tends to run, and so they are advertising the fact that their mascara is waterproof. The implication here that the woman wearing their mascara has found out her boyfriend is married and she's crying, but don't worry, that might happen to you, but at least their mascara won't run. Again, here, this was an advert for a hat company. I mean, they don't even have complete images in this, yet that moustache is incredibly iconic. So looking at the picture on the left, that very clearly is Adolf Hitler, and on the right, that is Charlie Chaplin, quite a famous comedian from the time when movies were sort of still in black and white and had no sound. And they're saying here that the only difference, if you look at the text, 3 simple words, it's the hat. Not implying that if you didn't have the hat, you would be Adolf Hitler, but saying that something simple like a hat could make a massive difference. The advert here is for organ donation. Now, ads or people doing public service announcements, the same as we saw with the ad with the gun violence and the Kinder Egg, generally advertisers tend to use children because subliminally, and I say subliminally, I mean when you're watching the advert or reading the advert, you don't actively think, oh, that's a child, so I'm now going to feel more emotional about the subject matter. It tends to happen without us even realizing that we are doing it. And the text here saying one of these 2 will get your organs, you decide. So either it goes to this sweet little girl and you could save her life, or they simply go in the bin. Again here, an ad for organ donation. This is missing the face, but this is if we look at the swastika and the moustache and the hair, Adolf Hitler. They've removed his face, I think, for a reason. It makes it more applicable to many people, but also probably less offensive. And the text saying everyone has something good, become a donor. So even if they are the worst human being possible, you could do a good thing and donate an organ, or it doesn't matter where the organs come from, they will do something good. This was one of, I'm sure many of you might be looking at this on your MacBook or you are looking at it on your iPhone. This was one of the first adverts from Apple when it was still called the Macintosh. And again, just a simple Apple representing the computer or the software, the company. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, introducing Apple to the personal computer. Very little text. I'm sure they could have added things about sort of RAM and software and hardware and memory, but that's not the point. The point that Apple has tried to make, I think, from the beginning, and it's always sort of been known in IT circles for its clean look, its simplistic look, and that's what, even from the beginning here, they were trying to reiterate. Here, an ad from Lego. Again, if we look at, I'm sure you might not remember from when you were little, but the play here, I think, is on imagination. So for a child, the image above of the 2 Lego blocks, they've built a plane, and the shadow at the bottom is what they see. So again, the implication here being that the only limits to Lego are your imagination. I'm sure this might sort of be known to many of you, or your friends, or yourselves, or your parents, but generally people tend to think that smoking hookah or hubbly bubbly is, or shisha, is less dangerous than cigarettes, but research has proven that smoking 1 coal is the same as smoking 2 cigarettes in one go. And at the bottom, you inhale the equivalent of 200 cigarettes from just 1 hour of smoking shisha. Quit now. And again, the shisha itself has been made up from old cigarette butts. An ad here about sort of plastic pollution. Straws and things like earbuds, for example, and plastic straws are, pollution from these are proven to be one of the worst kinds of plastic pollution. Think about all the straws you use in a week of eating out or McDonald's or whatever. And the implication being here that that straw obviously is strangling literally and figuratively our marine life. But again, the image is made to be look as if the woman is drinking. The drink itself is being made up of the turtle. Okay, so these are some really useful ads you can go and have a look at. They're award-winning adverts. We've got some for Discovery Channel, Coca-Cola, Nike, and then an ad that was really popular a good few years back, but people still know about it now, an ad for Language for Life. You can have a look at some of these. I would suggest you have a look at some of these to get some ideas for the upcoming task that I'm sure your teachers are going to be telling you about.